Brooke. I will call the June 29th, 2022 meeting of the Staff Hearing Officer to order and begin with preliminary matters. The first item on our agenda, any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items? I am not aware of any. Do we have any announcements or appeals? I don't have any. Staff, any? And then any comments from the members of the public pertaining to items that are not on this agenda but are within the purview of the Staff Hearing Officer. Ms. Fennessy, do we have any?
Thank you. I did not receive any speaker slips, and there are no attendees in the webinar, and we did not receive any written correspondence.
Okay, thank you then. We'll move away from preliminary matters into the first item on the agenda, which is 1440 Manitou Road. I won't read the entire project description. This information is online in the staff report and on the project plans, but the request before the staff hearing officer is related to a front setback modification. And Ms. Plummer, if you want to do the staff presentation.
Thank you, and if you can switch, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brooke. So as you can see on the screen, the site is currently developed with a single unit residence located on the corner of Manitou Road and Bella Drive. The house is 2 stories at Manitou Drive and 1 story off Bella Drive. And the purpose of today's hearing is to review improvements located in one of the front setbacks. As it's a corner lot, the property is subject to 2 30-foot front setbacks, which you can see identified on the plans. And the project is proposing minor improvements to the existing residence, including a raised foundation at the rear. That's essentially where the master bedroom suite is, and a small addition of 105 square feet. There is an existing deck on the property, and they're planning to expand the deck, a portion of which again is in the 30-foot front setback. And as also part of the project, they are proposing a new pool, which is not encroaching in any setback, but there is a associated pool equipment enclosure. The various encroachments within the setback range from the existing residence at 16 feet 6 inches, so with the new addition it'll be 15 feet 11 inches, at the deck 15 feet 9 inches, and at the pool equipment enclosure 10 feet. So while alternative designs may have been possible that are conforming and do not encroach in the setback, the site is constrained by 2 large front setbacks, and you can see that a fair amount of the existing residence does encroach in both of those setbacks as well as in the interior setback. It should also be noted, and I'll just go through a couple photos of the site, that the project site, as viewed from Bella Drive, is just adjacent to the public right-of-way off Bella Drive and is screened by an existing mature hedge. This area also functions as the backyard, so while it is a front setback, the overall use of that portion of the setback is primarily for backyard outdoor purposes. They have a deck, they're planning to put in a pool, so amenities such as the associated pool equipment enclosure and deck are considered appropriate amenities at a backyard. Staff is supportive of the project as the encroachments are relatively minor, and while the pool equipment is closer than the existing encroachment, the addition to the residence is a minor encroachment beyond what is existing on the residence. In addition, it allows the residence to maintain the 1-story character at the rear, preserving the style of architecture. All improvements are located closest to the public right-of-way rather than an adjacent neighbor, and are not generally anticipated to cause noise or privacy issues. And lastly, as I already mentioned, it's sufficiently screened. The project was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board in April of this year, and ultimately found that the improvements were, again, minor, screened, and appropriate to the residents. And that concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions of staff, so if the applicant has anything to add, did you want to come up? If you do, then if you wouldn't mind, please introducing yourself before. And
Tom Oxner, project architect. I think the staff report accurately represented the project. I'm satisfied.
thank you. And I'll open public comment. I know we did receive one letter in support of this project. Ms. Fennessy, do we have anybody who wishes to speak at the hearing?
I did not receive any speaker slips, and there are no attendees in the webinar. And that one written correspondence was from James Turner and Tony Sampson.
Great, thank you. I'll close public comment then and go to my decision. This one is pretty straightforward. I did read the staff report, went to the site yesterday, got familiar with the property and the area of the encroachment. And I think it makes a lot of sense to extend the same plane of the wall that already is non-conforming to one of the two front setbacks. The location of the pool and spa equipment in the front setback might normally be a bit of a concern, but with the topography change there, I don't anticipate it'd be visible from the street, and that would be subject to single-family design board further review anyway, and given that location, less likely to disturb neighbors. So I can approve the front setback modification. I would just have one minor amendment to the findings, so I'll just read it. The staff hearing officer finds that the front setback modification is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on a lot constrained by two 30-foot front setbacks. The proposed addition, deck extension, and pool equipment within an enclosure in the front setback along Bella Drive are modest, considered a minimal encroachment, appropriate improvements for residents in the rear yard, and there are no anticipated noise or privacy issues. And with that, my decision is appealable within, whoops, wrong slide. Meant to go. There we go, thank you. With that, my decision to approve the front setback modification is appealable within 10 calendar days, and within that same time period, the planning commission who reviews my decisions can decide to call that up if they want to hear the matter themselves. Otherwise, and if that happens, then Ms. Plummer would let you know. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 518 East Haley Street. This involves primarily commercial building. Proposal involves making it mixed use, adding a residential unit. And Mr. Bauman, if you want to start with the public or the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooke. I'm Tony Bauman, a planner assigned to this project. Let me go to the other set of photos here. This is a street view of the subject site. It's an existing commercial building containing retail and warehouse uses. There's a retail store at the front and the larger warehouse space behind that. It's all one building. In this photograph, you can see right in this area is the top of the first story, or the lower, it's all one story, but the lower part of the roof. This object right here is some visual screening around some mechanical equipment. And then right in here, the forward part of that taller part of the building has an upstairs commercial space, and it was an office space. And without permits, it was converted to a residential unit, and it's under enforcement. So this proposal would legalize and permit and make the necessary improvements for residential use in that office space to convert it to a residence. It's an interior stair currently inside the building that goes up to that upper office space. And right here, we're right in this area next to the building is a proposed stair. Between this tree and that wall of the building would be a new exterior stair to provide exterior only access to that residential use. So here's the site plan. Down at the bottom of the screen would be the front of the building facing Haley Street. And the building goes all the way through the lot, and behind the building is Richardson Avenue. And then this area, it's a little hard to discern building from, I'm sorry, the top of the screen is Haley Street. And the bottom of the screen, it backs up to Richardson Avenue. And this is the property line. The building is pretty close to the lot line to lot line. There's a little bit of space at the ground level in the back. Due to the grade change, there's a little bit of a stair going into a rear door into that commercial warehouse area. The property line runs between the building and this adjacent parking lot, where the parking for the property has always been provided. There's a small restaurant building here on Haley Street that also shares this parking. So the property would formalize that parking arrangement by doing an off-site parking agreement. So it's strictly a non-residential property, and adding this residential use would make it a mixed-use project. And the residential use comes along with a requirement for open yard. The purpose of open yard is to provide some outdoor living area and also a sense of openness on the property. Because of the existing development on the site, there's really no way to put any or provide any open space on the ground. So the project wouldn't meet the requirement for 15% of the lot area. It's a 10,000 square foot lot. So the normal requirement, if you were building a mixed use or residential development, would be 1,500 square feet of ground level open yard plus a private open yard. The size of this unit and its location on the second store would mean it would need to have a 72 square foot area of private yard. But the project instead proposes to use that roof, that lower roof out in front of the unit toward Haley Street, and construct a roof deck on there to provide 384 square feet of private open yard. And staff thinks that would be appropriate for the site. It would kind of separate the outdoor living space for the residents, elevated up above the ground level where it's all commercial and industrial uses, and give it a little more privacy and quietness and sense of openness up there on the roof. So we think it's an appropriate place to provide open yard. The problem with that is the mechanical equipment, the HVAC equipment on that roof. We don't know what the noise level is for that equipment. This is looking out toward Haley Street at that roof, and here's the mechanical equipment. There's two of these units in that screening. This is a picture inside the office space to be converted to the residents, looking out the front window. Again, looking out the front of that, what would be the unit onto the roof. This is about where there's the tree I showed before, where the stair would come up between this building and the tree, and the landing at the top of the stair would be in this area, and then a front door over here. So staff feels that the project can be an appropriate location for a new residential use with sufficient open yard, even though it requires a modification because it's not provided at the ground level. And Ms. Brooke, you contacted me yesterday about the conditions of approval in the staff report. They're very simple here, and we prepared some revised or amended conditions of approval that are more detailed and specific, so that it's more clear to all the parties involved what would be required to comply with the conditions of approval. So I'll bring those up here. So staff is proposing that these conditions shown here would replace those in the staff report under Section 6, Findings and Conditions. Requirements prior to permit issuance, that the off-site parking agreement get completed and recorded, and the applicant engage with a licensed acoustical engineer to analyze the noise level of that mechanical equipment and determine what would be involved in making that comply. Probably some sort of sound barrier around the equipment to contain the sound waves, and or maybe even a complete enclosure with a top on it, but that would have to be determined by the acoustical engineer and then included in the project plans. So that's why that's a requirement prior to building permit issuance, so that those measures get included in the building permit plans. And then prior to occupancy, to circle back on that noise issue and actually do measurements once the project is built to make sure that it actually does comply as anticipated. So with that, staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the project subject to these conditions of approval.
Great, thank you, Mr. Baumann. I think I only have one question for you, and it's really just to clarify for me. You did note this in the staff report. So the existing parking on the adjacent parcel, there's no need to change the number or configuration. There's 18 spaces, currently all for commercial uses, so just one of those spaces would need to be identified or somehow noted for the residential unit, and maybe the applicant wants to address that.
Right. Fortunately, the reduction of non-residential floor area offset or balanced out with the parking requirement for the new residents, so it worked out quite well. And then the space closest to that stair would be designated as resident parking only.
Oh, okay, thank you. I see that note on the plan now. Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Baumann. If the applicant wants to add anything, come up if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Make sure you turn on the microphone.
Hello, my name is Brooke Van Dyne for Sherry and Associates, applicant and agent for the owner. I just wanted to address a couple of details that Mr. Baumann brought up in his presentation. I know that he mentioned the tree at the new exterior stairs, and that was a concern that the board had mentioned in review. We had initially shown that tree to be reviewed. They asked if we could just keep the tree and trim it to allow the vertical access above the new exterior stairs, and so that's what we're going to do, and we've noted that on the plans. The SFDB board, they also asked us to address the screening for the mechanical equipment on the roof. We have retained the services of an acoustical engineer that we're currently working with to address the noise volume and how that would affect the residential unit on the upper level. And we also have the parking, the off-site parking agreement that is going to be filed. And so we're aware of that, and that's going to be filed of record before permit issuance. And then other than that, we received positive comments from the SFDB board regarding the open yard area due to the lot constraints and the fact that the building takes up almost the entire property. Really, the only feasible place for the open yard area was on that rooftop deck. So there weren't really any other alternatives to pursue. But other than that, we received favorable comments from them, and that's really all I have.
Thank you for that. I don't think I have questions for the applicant. No, I don't. Thank you for acknowledging that you're okay with the conditions as revised and shown today. I'll open public comment in case we have anyone who wants to speak on this item. I hadn't received any written correspondence, but
No, we did not receive any written correspondence, and there are no remote public comments. If you'd like to make a public comment.
Who would?
Okay. No. You could actually, please come up to the podium.
oh, we need the podium.
Yeah.
That one. Thank you.
And then, once you're finished with your public comment, if you could please fill out a speaker slip so we can record.
Sure. Okay. Is this on? I'm Bill Bailey. I'm co-owner of 424 Olive Street. My building looks directly to that building. I wanted to make sure that the existing warehouse did not increase in size as far as height goes on that. That was my main concern. I also wanted to ensure that there was no additional windows that were coming into the existing building to make room for this. As I understand it, this front deck area is going to be over the front of the building facing Haley Street, so that shouldn't be a problem. The existing HVAC equipment, is that going to be moved onto the top of the warehouse roof, or is that going to be remain in the location it is now? I don't know on that.
I can relay those questions.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I say, I was worried about a view situation if that building was increased in height. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey, and perhaps the applicant, if you wouldn't mind responding to the questions and concerns. And if you need the plans back up there, let me know, and we can switch the screen back to the plans.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, just to address the comments, we are not proposing any height increase. The windows will all still be facing Haley Street, as you had asked. In regards to the mechanical equipment, we're not proposing a change in the location of any of that mechanical equipment. And pending the results of the findings of the acoustical engineer, if anything like that were to change, if we were to have to relocate the mechanical equipment, that would be in the resubmittal plans for when we go back to SFDB. But we're not proposing any changes to the location of the mechanical equipment, or no proposed changes to the height of the existing warehouse. That will all stay the same.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, no other speakers on the remote? Okay, then I'll close public comment. Thank you for answering those questions, confirming that the volume of the building wouldn't change. And as you mentioned, if there are any, and as Mr. Baumann mentioned, if there are any modifications that need to be made either around or to the equipment for sound dampening, that would be subject to the Architectural Board of Review for any exterior changes. That's not technically within my purview, although it is related to the open yard location. But the look of it would be subject to Architectural Board of Review. So if Mr. Bailey, if you want to be notified of when this project returns to the Architectural Board of Review, you can talk to Mr. Baumann about being added as an interested party, and then you'd be able to see those plans when they're presented. So this is an interesting project. As we try to modify our development standards to accommodate more housing downtown, it's interesting to see each time what projects, challenges they face in trying to add housing. And this is, I think, a creative solution to conversion of existing office space to a residential unit. With that comes challenges downtown when lots are built out to the property line. And so being creative about how we address the open yard and other requirements. I'm glad to see that there's no impact to parking, that it's just really a conversion of one of the spaces from commercial to residential. So we have that space on site. I appreciate that the open yard actually might be pretty enjoyable. I can imagine the views up there might be pretty nice. And so that's really the only part of this project that's within my purview, although other things are happening on the site as part of the building permit application and Architectural Board of Review purview. So I can support the open yard modification subject to the updated conditions of approval. And I think that was it from my comments that I wanted to make sure that I noted. So the findings subject to the revised conditions of approval, I can find that the open yard modification is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot, and that providing open yard at the roof level will still result in appropriate and desirable space for outdoor living and enjoyment. And with that decision to approve the modification, I do need to announce that my decision is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission, and within that same time, they can decide to call this item up if they want to hear that matter before them. And if that happens, Mr. Baumann will let you know. And I'll close this item then. And that's the last item on our agenda, so if there's nothing else, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.